right. I think, yeah, it looks like we're live. Looks like we're coming through. How are you, my
We're
friend?
live.
We're
We
live.
are live.
Yep.
Yes. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday. The Saturday kicking off the long weekend of Labor Day for Monday.
Yep. Do you guys support that in Canada, or is it different up there?
No, it's the same. A lot of our
Okay.
holidays actually line up. Just some of the names are a little different. We do have one like extra one that was invented, I think, last year or the year before. It's an Indigenous Day of Acknowledgement or something at the end of at the end of September.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's something to do with like being guilty or I don't know.
White guilt, like everything's based on anyone.
We have a very different history with our Indigenous and First Nations people in Canada than the United States. We actually
Yeah.
bought the land that we're on, and they were like, okay, and then they kind of felt a little off by it, and I don't blame them for that. But it wasn't egregious. I mean, the tribes, they didn't understand that you could actually plant roots like trees in the land for towns and villages. They just thought, oh, you can't own land or it's a complicated thing. But either way, we did sort it
what
out.
what are we doing, Script? What are we talking about right now?
I have no idea. We're just doing the morning ramble. It's Labor Day. We got Labor Day stuff coming up. So yeah, I mean it's a lot of weird stuff that's going on. We're gonna have a fun show. We've got a very interesting script. We've got a script by.
It's a good script. This is a good script.
Is it a
I feel
good
like I've been
script?
lucky. Every time I'm on with you, there hasn't been a script that I hated. I'll say it that way. But heard other shows where I wasn't on, and they were scripts that I was like, I tried to read them, and I get like 10 pages deep, and I'd be like, I'm glad I'm not on the show this week. I'm not reading the rest of this, and I wouldn't even read it. I'm not gonna lie, script. I definitely have done that.
No, that's quite all right. I mean, last week's script, it wasn't the same voting style. Like I kind of liked it just a little bit. Jake wasn't up to his standards, which I completely got, and it made for a great show because we're kind of looking for that thing. We want to see something that's a little bit divisive, but at the same time, we also want to highlight, when a script does really well, it should be acknowledged, and when a script does terrible, it should be also acknowledged for that. Because
Yeah, I agree. That's the whole point of the show, is to be unfiltered and be honest, but not be cruel. I don't think. But yeah, I think that's spot on. Speaking of which, it sounds like the Madden script's getting done, right?
yeah, that's right. David O. Russell
And
is directing it, and
yep. And who's gonna play John Madden?
the brilliant Nicolas Cage, of course.
Yes. And when I first heard that, I'm like, what the F? And then I thought more about it, and I'm like, wait a second. Could he gain 40 pounds? Could he, it depends on what age we're looking at John Madden playing, right? But can't, then I'm like, the voice, could I see this happening?
Well, it'd be
And then I
70s
heard
and
Tom.
80s, yeah.
I heard Tom on Midnight's Edge mixing John Madden with Nicolas Cage, and dude, I was dying laughing. I was not kidding. Tears in my eyes. I haven't laughed that hard in a while, and Tom just nailed it. I'm like, God, someone please needs to snip that, and like we need to play that as an intro for him, because John Madden's like Maddenisms, like the what's the turkey thing again? What's
The
it called? I always forget.
turducken, yeah, the turducken.
Yeah, the turducken. But you've got Nicolas Cage's energy. I'm not even gonna try to do it. Dude, it was, oh my God. Were you on that show, or did you hear him do that?
I
can't
was
remember.
on
It
that
was so
show,
funny.
and we're still waiting for someone to clip that and share it out, because that's
Oh
good. I've even told him just to re-record it himself and then just release it as a funny skit, because that is
it was
great.
gold.
Nick Cage will most likely be makeup job, primarily because over the last 8 years or so, Hollywood's been really encouraging not having actors gain massive amount of weight and then have to lose it afterwards, because it really does a number on the body.
Yeah, it's bad for your heart. I know that. It's
It-
really
it-
hard
it's
on your heart.
it's horrible to try and do that, especially artificially, through binge eating or whatever you have to do in order to gain that weight. So yeah, don't want to compromise an actor's talent, but I do think, I mean, we've already had a few comments saying like, oh, it got the the scripts on Saturdays bump. That's why it started going to production, because we talked about it at the beginning of the year. Sure, well, I'll take credit for that for now until someone else disputes it. Why not?
I am not going to take credit for that. I'm too humble. I'm not even going to
Get more people to come watch the show.
I'm glad it's getting done, because that was a fun script, and I felt like there's, aside from some small rewrites, like I feel like, yeah, that I love the concept. I love everything. I think that there's a huge audience for it that would love. There's very few gamers that haven't heard of Madden, right? Like it's just become synonymous with football, or not just football, but with the best sports game. Basically, everyone had to buy Madden every year. I was into it for about 2 years, 3 years in college, and then I just got sick of it and haven't played it since. But I just think that we've got an audience of gamers now. Everyone's a gamer to some degree, and let's do it. Let's see the beginning of the Madden gaming franchise, and people can see a little bit more about Madden's life. And he had a fascinating life, so I think that I'm excited. I'm excited, and to have Nicolas Cage. My go-to for Nicolas is I always think of, was it Raising Arizona in the wife beater. I always get that image, but then I always hear his voice in Gone in 60 Seconds. So I kind of mix those two in my brain, and I'm like, that's Nicolas Cage. And then well, not and then, but what I did do is because you guys were talking about it, I got to thinking about him, and I grabbed The Rock, and I'm going to watch The Rock in my theater either tonight or tomorrow night, and make my girlfriend sit through it because she hasn't seen it before.
Oh,
and it's one of my favorite action movies ever. And I'm like, why have I not shown her this yet? So we're gonna watch The Rock, and if you haven't seen it and you're listening right now, do yourself a favor if you like action movies. Sean Connery, Nicolas Cage, and who was the bad guy?
Ed Harris. Ed Harris.
Abyss. Yeah, Ed Harris. Great cast. All shot by one of our most favorite, beloved action.
When he had
direct-
potential. When he had
directors.
potential, that's when it was shot. When he was hungry and had potential.
He's kind of turned into a meme. But who are we talking about? Script.
We're talking about Michael Bay, who is the
Yes.
nephew by marriage of Leonard Nimoy.
Oh, I did not know that detail.
That's
interesting.
why Leonard voiced one of the Transformers in his one of the Michael Bay Transformers films. That's the only reason he did
cool.
it.
Oh, I love Nimoy. I miss him. Rest in peace. But yeah, I think that Cage will be great for as Matt. And the more I thought about it, at first I was like, huh. It's kind of like when you see Cage in that Superman, the beta suit when they put him in the Superman, is like, this was legit. Like they were looking at Cage to play Superman, and you don't think it's real until you see it. That's kind of where I'm at with this John Madden thing. So I'm excited.
I'm excited too. All right, so I think everything is all good to go. We did have a little technical hiccup back here, but you guys out there didn't notice that, and that's just on the recording side of things. So for those of you that are listening on the record or expecting to catch it a little bit later on the Patreon, it's going to be a little bit delayed because I have to wait for YouTube to do the processing on that part. But we will have a temporary partial episode starting with the actual show itself instead of the banter. So I apologize for that, but it is what it is when you're dealing with third-party recording software. So with that being said, let's get this show on the road. Welcome to Scripts on Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie-going audience, a behind-the-scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I am your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week is TJ Mack from Mac Media. So happy to have you back, sir.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
We've got we have a very interesting script in the sense that the writer in this case here is a little bit more, well, not so much a little bit more, but a few steps more accomplished than the other writers we have addressed so far on the show. He's actually...
Which surprised me on that.
Yeah, he's one of my contemporaries. I have not met him, but we did start the same year in the industry. He's written a number of shorts, some special features on DVDs. He's written some interesting horror films that are not well known. But yes, this is a screenplay that scored in 47th place on the 2023 blacklist. It was
that low. I thought it would have scored higher, actually.
Well, it only scored 47th place with 10 votes, and oddly enough, we've had screenplays that are in the top 25 or top 30 with maybe 11 or 12 votes. So it's a really huge margin right here.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And so he scored 47 with 10 votes for the script Undying, and his name is Ben Ketai. And the logline for his script that placed in the 2023 blacklist is this: a woman suffocated by motherhood has an affair with a man she hasn't seen since high school, only to discover he has been dead for years.
Yes, that's a good log line. Would
Tight.
you like to give you a synopsis to follow that log line?
Absolutely.
All right, the movie's called Undying, and here's your synopsis. Fiona, a former music reporter turned stay-at-home mom, is looking for a break from the monotony of motherhood. When her husband is too busy with work and her best friend Becca bails on their 20-year high school reunion, Fiona decides to go solo. What starts as a dull evening turns electrifying when she reconnects with Ian, her old boyfriend without benefits. Their rekindled spark leads to a night of passion, but Fiona's guilt quickly turns to horror when she learns from Becca that Ian died 12 years ago. Now Ian's spirit isn't just haunting Fiona, it's creeping into the lives of her husband and children, turning her brief escape into a living nightmare.
That's the
Bum, bum.
that's the synopsis. I mean, I will say this: tight log line, really intriguing. It's got a good hook to it. Made the synopsis a lot easier for me to write as a result of it after I read the script.
You're so good at writing them, though. I love it.
Well, thank you. It's when you've been doing it for almost 20 years, you kind of get the knack for how to sell these types of things.
Yeah, it's like I flipped over the DVD and boom, there it was.
Yeah. And the other part too is like this one here. This script appears like it might be going into production on the independent side of things. I believe the writer Ben Ketai is going to be producing it and writing it. He might not be directing it, but that might change. But it looks like it's going to be a self-financed thing, a passion project, a calling card of sorts for him. So I want to congratulate him on that. But let's talk about and see if this script is going to bring in an audience. So, Mac, what were some of your first thoughts within the opening act of the screenplay Undying?
I was on board. In fact, I think you just used this word. I thought it was very tight. I liked this from the get-go. I like his style. It's not over wordy. It's descriptive to a great degree of like minimalism. You know what I mean? Some writers, they nail that. They're like, it paints the picture very well where your brain goes, oh, I'm going to create this imagery, and then move on. Hurry, move on. Let's get to the dialogue. Let's get to the next thing. And so when I read this, I was like, yeah, this guy is a good writer. I do like his style. I feel like it's not too flowery and it's not too boring either. So I felt like the pacing was good. But yeah, I think we jump into the movie at a very, very normal way. I didn't think of any way. I didn't put much energy into thinking of another way to start this film, but I felt like it was pretty good. Movies like this tend to build, if you know what you're going into, like say, most horror movies, you get a warm up, right? Where you're safe. You're safe for the first 10, 15 minutes.
Yep.
Every horror movie I've ever watched has done that, except for, and I'm not going to swear here, but F you, The Grudge, because I will never forget my theater experience with that when you think you're safe and you're like, okay, I'm going to get settled in and get comfortable and kind of brace for this. And The Grudge like just jumped into it almost literally. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm not safe anymore with these horror movies. And so I felt like this was like, hey, we open with we're meeting the family, right? We're meeting the kids. We've got Oliver and Emma, right? Was the girl's name?
Yes, Oliver's the like 5-6-year-old son. Emma is the daughter. I think she's approaching double digits.
Yeah. Who's very good at piano. Oh, here we go. She's 9.
Yep.
Oliver's 6, and Emma's a great pianist, very good piano player for her age. And Oliver's at 6 is just like he's like the coolest 6-year-old boy you could ever write, right? Like he's awesome, he's fun, he's playful, he's smart, he's kind of witty, and he's not, he doesn't throw tantrums or anything. Like both these kids are very, very lovable, which I didn't feel like was cliche ever. I felt like these are very believable kids in these situations, and the way they talk felt very well written. And I would say that for all of his characters. Again, this is all stuff that for me are all on the pro side of the fence. Like I was on board. What about you? What did you think?
I thought it was pretty strong because what we get here is Fiona is prepping for a special dinner for her husband Trevor, and they live in an apartment that it's in the New York area. It's been one of the 5 boroughs. I can't remember which one exactly. I think it's Brooklyn, and it's a building that's kind of run down. There are rats in the walls, cockroaches.
Oh yeah, the pipes make a lot of noise.
The
Water
pipes make a lot of noise. However, I think it's a 3-bedroom, so I mean it's definitely going to be pretty expensive there because I got the understanding that Oliver and Emma have their own rooms, and then Fiona and her husband Trevor have, of course, their bedroom. And I think
Brooklyn
the bedroom,
Heights, Brooklyn Heights is where it was.
And then yes, and then the other part too is that their bedroom also has a private bath as well. Like they have a private shower.
That's living it up in New York City, man.
It is, despite the rat feces in the drawers and the rats crawling through the walls. I mean, it's still pretty luxurious, all things considered. So what we get here is that Fiona is a stay-at-home mom, but she's prepping for this special dinner. So she's taking the kids out to the grocery store. They're getting lobster. They run into this woman named Rita, who's 40s, and she's kind of like giving a little jab into Fiona because she has her own business. She makes her own hours. And we find out that Fiona used to be this amazing journalist when it came to covering musical acts, and all types of musical acts, but mostly like kind of like grunge metal and stuff of that nature, like places where you'd find a mosh pit. That was her home, but she gave it all up to be a stay-at-home mom.
Her something like not the Rolling Stone, but in that vein where she was. Yeah. She'd go on the road and maybe go on a few concerts with the bands and anyway, so she was living that life. She has her tattoos. She had that wild streak, and she was sounds like she was a pretty good journalist. Yeah,
and she was meeting her deadlines, covering like 7 acts in it was 7 acts in 5 nights. Like that's how she would do it. And she'd have articles for all of them, which is like that's someone who loved what they did.
Yeah, because just to attend that many concerts in 5 nights, dude, come on. Let alone then wake up the next day and write your articles about him. Like that's someone who's dedicated to their craft.
And so we get a sense of that really off the bat within usually the first 5 pages, which is quite impressive. And it goes down to basically Ben's writing in the fact that he just knew how to cut through all the minutiae and get straight to the heart of things, which when you're dealing with something in a suspense horror genre, it's really what you want to do because you're building the character a little bit quicker with regards to the plot, because when you're dealing with horror, you kind of want to just kind of lazily hit the obvious early on as opposed to subtly dishing it out. And the reason being is because once you get them into their point of no return, their major jeopardy, you need to be all in on the fact that everything that we've learned up to this point is going to be compromised. So so he really hit hard by saying, okay, so she's a stay-at-home mom. She absolutely loves her kids, but she does wish she could go back to work. And
yeah, she misses her old life. And then the other thing I noticed too is he just real quick, like he did this as well. Remember, he introduces Becca, her friend, via text.
Yes.
And we see that her friend Becca is definitely still in kind of like that 20s mindset because she's talking about some dude she met. She might go out with on a dating app or something, right? And they're kind of making fun of his looks and how old he's supposed to be and stuff. And you see that she's like this mom who we just saw talking to her kids and like, come on, kids, let's go get the lobster for dad and blah, blah, blah. And then she's on there like talking like another just your average college girl to a roommate or a friend, right, about boys. So we see that she still has that playful banter. She's not completely, quote unquote, lost in motherhood, at this point.
Exactly. And it was a very effective way to kind of get into the headspace of this character where she is literally she's dedicated to being a mom and that's her life, but she has her friend Becca to kind of give her a little bit of updates with what that life she used to have and how that is still performing, because you do get the sense with the relationship between Fiona and Trevor that eventually when the kids are old enough to kind of take care of themselves, she would probably go back to that life in reporting, but they just need time. And Fiona's a little bit impatient in that regard. But once she gets home to prep dinner and whatnot, Trevor comes in, and instead of being glowing and happy because he got the promotion, he finds out that nobody is getting the promotion. And the other part, too, is that there's a very interesting aspect to why he didn't get the promotion. And basically it came down to the fact that the company didn't want to promote him because of how he looks, which I think is kind of a jab at the general industry and the way our times have been operating as of late. because
he's white. That's what this is. That's how I read that. He's white.
he
and
might
they want to
be
go with someone who's
but
a minority.
It's 100% never specified what his ethnicity is. But
That's true. That's true, I guess. Yeah.
but that's one of the things that they were kind of interesting, is they basically saying that even though by merit we are led to believe that he's earned it, his company has said no. The other part too is that he's never really exudes much confidence as a as a character. So he's kind of like, he's not exactly a beta male, but he's not alpha either.
Yeah. Let me read the line. This is how he's described. Ready? Trevor, 40, handsome but slight, well dressed but unassertive, constantly torn between duty and self-worth. So that's our description we get reading the script. So my question to you on this note script is, how does a director convey those details onto film? Because we're not going to be in his head. We're not going to get that information as an audience. So I've always wondered this from a script writing standpoint. That's there so that the actor that plays Trevor knows, okay, this is my base, right? This is the base of my character. But is that all this is in the script? Because how do you convey that on film? That's my question.
Well, you have to get inside an actor's head and see how they would actually convey that, and it's your job to make sure that you frame it so that whatever the actor is doing comes across through the camera without words. So
yeah, because if I was like, hey script, you're my actor, right? I'm like, hey, I need you to convey that you are constantly torn between duty and self-worth. Go. Like, what would you do?
Well, you probably wouldn't be standing straight up, but you wouldn't be slouching too much, and you'd probably
your eyes are going to dart around a lot. Like,
your eyes would be pretty focused, but what you'd probably be doing is you'd probably have a couple of apprehensive motions with your hand as to where you're going to put your briefcase down. Like, are you going to do it on the counter? Are you going to do it on the floor? You're not quite sure, and then you just kind of drop it, because that's that uncertainty. Because again, the whole idea is like lack of assertiveness also equals uncertainty. So you just have to lean into, well, what can you do that's uncertain? You could remove your coat, and do you hang it on the hook that's on the door, or do you hang it on the coat rack that's next to the door, right? Like, and if you just have to do that subtly, because normally if you have this confident person, you come in, you know exactly where he's putting what because he's got his routine. That is what makes him reliable. You have to basically have this guy come in here and make it look like he doesn't really have a routine of sorts, and there's a couple ways you could play that off, especially when you have like two kids in the scene as well. Like, they could be running around doing whatever, so that can throw them off balance. But you could then, the director or even an audience might infer, okay, that's just the hectic nature of being a family life. If you really want to show him that he's got a little bit of he's not weak spined, but he's got maybe a compromised one, you'd have to have him kind of isolated in the shot, doing something that doesn't feel deliberate.
Right. And this would be part of the CSA's job too, is to get the right person for this, right? So that you want someone that's not just handsome but slight, but also could have those little nuances for the type of character that can do that. Like, you don't want a total weakling like George McFly in 1955, but you also don't want Arnold Schwarzenegger from Conan, right? You need something that's like, I'm thinking maybe like, what's his name that was in Peaky Blinders? Is it
Cillian Murphy? Yeah, Cillian Murphy.
Yeah, Cillian Murphy. So he'd be. I could see him. We're looking at someone who's maybe 40. He could pull off 40. Somebody like that, right? Because I don't know. I just wonder how much of it is just your casting, or is it your directing, that you can form the actor you want to fit this kind of a role. And I know hopefully we're not going off in the weeds, but this is the stuff when I listen to your show, this is the part I want to know about. Like, how do the directors do this? How do the casting agents do this? Like what's, kind of, how's the sausage made in this specific example? You want an actor that can be constantly torn between duty and self-worth, that's well-dressed, that's 40-ish, unassertive, but handsome and slight, right? Like,
well, the well-dressed is the easy part. Like, that's
right.
That's costumes.
And the age, right? You're like, okay, you could sell 40. But yeah, so how much of that is the casting job? Because we see some shows like, oh my God, the abortion of Borderlands, which was, everything was miscast. Every single person was miscast. Like, yes, we love Kate. She's horrible for that part. She's 30 years too old for that part. We have Jamie Lee Curtis, who's 60 years too late for that part. Like what the crap, right? But let's not go down that. I'm just saying, like, that's a great example of bad casting. So what I'm saying here is, how much, I don't even know how you would answer this, but please do. How much of this is casting to get to the right character, or how much of it is directing that can then mold the rest of that? Like, is it 80% casting, 20% acting? Like, how does this work? Explain it to us that don't understand this.
Well, I mean, every film is its own little business and it has its own little priorities. If this is going to be on the independent side of things, and you have the writer, also the producer, who may or may not be the director, if Ben Ketai is going to be either of those roles, he's going to have a say in which talent captures what he was going for on the page. Heck, he may have even written this script with a specific cast in mind that he is going to use as a part of his pitch.
Right.
We don't know for certain, but there's always speculation at this point. Usually what you want to do is you want your director and your casting director to kind of be on the same page when it comes to who they select. And then on top of that, what you're really doing is you're selecting an actor that can actually bring about the performance you're looking for, with the director having to do very little work to actually direct, so that they can focus on really only the things that they can't seem to get out of the actors, as opposed to the stuff that they can. And that's really with every director. Directors work. There's a reason why directors work with a lot of the same actors, is because they know how they perform. They have developed a shorthand. They know how to get everybody on the same page and in sync with each other. And so all the director has to do is like a basic blocking. Doesn't have to explain what the actors' requirements are for the scene, because they'll already know. And he just can focus on, okay, how can I shoot this to be the best possible way to capture this performance? And that's kind of what you want to be in the perfect world. It's not always like that, but that's usually the goal.
But some directors are much better than others at pulling the most they can out of an actor, right?
Yes, absolutely.
That's what makes a really good director. Is they're like, you do multiple takes, and then you know how to talk to them and communicate with them and get them fired up for that specific scene or whatever. That's a huge part of directing, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because let's take a look at a very easy one. Let's take a look at Ben Affleck, right? So when Gus Van Sant is directing Ben Affleck in Good Will Hunting, you actually feel a performance coming out of Ben Affleck, right?
Right.
But when Zack Snyder is directing Ben Affleck as Batman, you get nothing.
I mean, the costume was good.
Yeah, but that's easy. I mean, you just need a good costume designer. So that's one of the things you got to realize. Like, it's a good director knows how to get what they need out of a good actor, and if you are relying too much on the actor to do all the work, and you're just there to play basketball or point the camera and click record, you're not going to be delivering something that is going to be of any use to not only your studio but your audience as well.
Yeah, I can see that. So, and I guess it also depends on your genre. Like, some genres are much more dependent. Like, say, a drama is going to be much more dependent on the acting of the character versus an action movie, where people are probably more forgiving for an okay performance because they want to get to the next action scene and see stuff blow up or whatever, right?
Yes, but unfortunately, we've had so many decades of action scenes that our audiences have already been conditioned to and desensitized to them, that the only way those action scenes hold any meaning is if you can actually inject some drama to it, which is the old model that they've had before special effects became so much more easier to accomplish, because you would have long sets of scenes that weren't action dependent, but they were very character driven. And then when we got to the action, it's like, oh, we see that this actually could lead to the death of our main character. We actually care about what's going to happen here, as opposed to when you see an action scene or an action set piece every 5 to 7 minutes, you're like, you're building up a resistance to it. It no longer feels special. It no longer holds value because you're oversaturated by it. It's kind of like when you gorge out on your favorite meal all the time. Sometimes you might get you might get a little tired of it a little bit too quick and realize that you need to really spice it up with something else. And then
it becomes oversaturated. It's like jingling keys, right? Like, you can only do that for so long before it just becomes normal again, and then you got to change the taste or the flavor. And I like what you said. So, to go back to the story, we're talking about, you got to care about the characters, right? Mm-hmm. And that was a question I had for you too. When you said he was so great at jumping in in a horror film, you've got to like establish this stuff pretty quick. And he did that really well with, we meet the family, we meet the kids, mom and dad and the kids. But is it to me, it seems like it would be important that you have enough character development leading in that you give a crap too, so that when they are in danger, you're not rooting for the monsters to get them, right? Because they're so unlikable.
Yeah,
at,
this
like,
is not
stuff
a
like
Friday
that,
the
right?
It's not a Friday the 13th movie where that is literally the formula where the characters
Right, right.
you're following are unlikable. You want Jason to take his revenge.
Right. You're rooting for him because yeah, these other people are so unlikable. So is that part of the strategy here that's kind of unseen that he's doing as a writer? He's like, here's these people, here's enough of their backstory that they're believable as characters, and also they're enough that they develop enough empathy that you care, so that when some bad stuff starts to happen to Fiona, especially that's our protagonist, that we're invested, right? We're like, whoa, what's we care about her. We don't want this stuff to happen, right?
Right. And that comes pretty quick because after the bad news, they eat the lobster anyways because it'd be foolish not to. After the bad news that Trevor's not getting the promotion, he has to work harder or longer to really kind of justify that he's the right pick. Fiona, lays down the idea, maybe if we need extra money or find a better place, I should go back to writing. And, Trevor does the smart thing. He says all the extra money you'd get would go into basically daycare for the kids until they could take care of themselves. It'd be completely useless.
Which I love, and this is real life experience right here bleeding through, which makes a good writer, because this is exactly what happens. I don't have kids, but I saw my sister. She was 2 years older than me, and when she started having kids, they struggled with this. Was, hey, should I work too? And they did the math, and it was like, after taxes and everything else, they might get an extra $100 a month, but then neither one of them are with the kids all day. So it made more sense for my mom or for my sister to stay at home as a mom, to spend time with the kids. And so I felt like that was great. That was very believable. And then the next thing that stuck out to me was when she was reading the story to Oliver to go to sleep that night. Do you remember what? They don't say it, but I recognized it. Do you know what book she was reading him? What story
Yes,
book?
it was the Giving Tree.
The Giving Tree. And what's the synopsis of the Giving Tree book? It's for a children's book. It's way too heavy in my opinion. But what is it? What's the synopsis? What's the lesson you would say?
Well,
for that?
the lesson is the version I read had the boy. A boy would kind of became friends with this tree, and the tree would say, you climb my branches, climb my trunk, swing on my branches, or eat the fruit off my branches, the apples, cut my branches to build a fire, keep yourself warm. Yeah. The Giving Tree just kept on giving itself to make the life of the child easier. And I think it ends with the Giving Tree is basically like cut down. And if I remember correctly, it was turned into a house, or was it turned into some furniture?
I don't remember what it's turned into, but ultimately gives its life for the boy.
For the boy as he grows up, because now the boy has actually got a family of his own. And everything that the Giving Tree has given has now not just helped the boy now as a man, but it's helping that boy's child, that man's child.
And the positive side of the story is, hey, look, they did all this wonderful stuff by giving, right? But then the other side of it, from a psychological standpoint, is this is terribly unhealthy. This is like the worst codependent relationship ever. Like if you're in a relationship and you give and give and give to where you basically give your life for someone else and they don't give back to you, that's a really bad thing. And so I think that when he read this is our foreshadowing for what comes later. And I didn't pick that up until I reread it. Did you notice that?
Oh, no, I was picking it up right away, because it's not even just that aspect too. It's also there's a couple of things that are threaded through here, and this is why I kind of appreciated what Ben was doing here. So he's threading not just the thematic elements of the Giving Tree, but he's also got, and he's a bit more obvious in this case, but he's also basically having fun with Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart.
Okay.
And that comes a little bit later once we get into the whole reunion aspect, which we're very close to doing, guys.
Yes,
because there's it's a fairly brief script. It's only about 106 pages, but
it reads very fast.
It reads very fast, but it's also very dense, because there's a lot of stuff that's compressed in there quite well. The one thing that threw me off were some of the music cues, because they're very, I guess, late 90s, early 2000s dependent, and I felt that era of music stunk, so I never really listened to it as much.
Okay, listen. I worked in radio at that time, and so I got every reference, and I was like, so I kind of appreciated it, but I'm not sure if everyone watching the film would. I was like, we need some Third Eye Blind or some Eve 6. There are some other things that I would have put in there that I think would have been better. Even some Goo Goo Dolls would have worked, but anyway, it was still good. But yeah, don't get me talking about music. So. but yes, I agree. I agree. Some of the music choices would not have been my first choices, but yeah, we do, and I do like that. I feel like the pacing in the script was spot on. I never got bored. I'm like, let's go, let's go. I
Hmm.
never felt that way. It read very clean, very crisp, and very quick. And so yeah, again, back to his credit as a writer, I thought Ben did fantastic with
The
all
other
this.
part too is that we introduced the B plot before we actually introduced the A plot. Now the B plot is that Emma has got a recital coming up, and she's very nervous about this, even though she's very good at playing the piano. This is the first time she's going to be performing in front of a large audience, and it's kind of getting to her. And so Fiona is trying to be supportive and saying that she's going to be okay. Now she's got nicknames for them. Oliver is Bug, and Emma is Pips, I think. Or
I remember
Peeps.
Bug. I don't remember if Pips is accurate, but yes, for sure. But on the Bug, I remember that.
And so that's the little nicknames for kids. So you get some endearing aspects to that as well. However, this is also happening the same week that she is going to her 20-year high school reunion, which oddly enough, last year was my
Yay.
2 years ago was my 20-year high school reunion, and nobody planned it and nobody did anything. We basically just, an email went out and we're like, yeah, no, and that was it.
Hey, side note, can I just say my opinion on school reunions is they're antiquated, they're stupid. Stop doing it. The whole point of them was to reconnect with people from high school, right?
Right.
We don't need that anymore with the internet.
Social
with
media has replaced the reunion.
It's complete. If you're not my friend on social media now, I don't want to see you at a reunion. Like otherwise, we would be close enough that we would already be friends. That's my point. I love a lot of the people I went to high school with. We had a great time. It was a good chapter of my life. I don't need to go revisit them and do like a checkup on them or a measuring stick to see, if they're what they've done to be successful or not in their lives. I don't care about any of that. Like I love where they're at in my head. We had the good times, and that's where they should stay. So anyway, that's all I'm saying about high school reunions. But
Yeah, I mean, also ours happened during like peak COVID, so like nobody wanted to do it. But
That's not good.
but here's the thing that's also funny. So within 5 years, they tried to do like when Facebook just started. Someone tried to organize a high school reunion, and we said it's been 5 years, not enough has changed. Go away. So what's funny is that aside from my ex-girlfriend, who I still talk to from time to time, I haven't really spoken to anyone other than my, the parents of my godchildren from high school, and I'm very fortunate for that because I didn't care.
Yeah, and
Much.
that's normal. I had a very small school. My graduating class was 46 kids. Okay,
That is very
so
small.
so I was at a very small town, very small school, very. If you've ever lived in a small town or even watched a movie about small towns, they're usually pretty accurate to what it's like. I was good. I was there. I did it, and I love the memories and the friendships that I had, and I knew them better than most people get to know their classmates in much bigger high schools. And like I said, it was good and it was over, and that's fine. I don't. It's like I don't need I don't need to have a reunion for people that I worked with at a pizza joint that I worked at when I was 23. Like, hey, let's meet together in 10 years and catch up. Like, no, I don't need to do that.
Exactly.
Why do I need to do it with people that I was forced into an education system with, right? Like, anyway.
Well, at this point here, it's really more just a means of catharsis. Like, hey, let's go back and reminisce on our youth and get drunk when it's legal, which I always find kind of funny because I don't know, maybe I'm in the minority for this, but I don't want to be young again. as advantageous as it could be to some degree, it's like, no, I've done that. I like looking to see what new things I can do.
I love the retelling of stories, and I love to hear it from other people that remember it slightly differently. Like I love that part of it, but I don't drink, so I don't care about that aspect of it. And like I said, I kind of don't want to be disappointed by people that I know where they're at in my head, that they've got their little part in my head of like, oh, this is who you were, right? What if they're totally different now? What if they're totally assholes now, or what if they're totally like, you know what I mean? Like I don't want that, right? So it's okay. Let's leave it where it's at. I don't want to go poking that bear. I've got plenty of other stuff to do with my time than to recap that. So anyway, I don't want to talk anymore about class reunions.
Well, I mean, the central point is the class reunion because I get the sense from the script that the stuff that we're talking about is the reason why Becca, because it was Becca and Fiona, they're the high school friends, they're going back. Yeah. Becca backs out. And she doesn't give
No,
a
she-
reason why.
No, she didn't. She had to work. Come on. She definitely had to work. Yeah, you're right. She didn't want to go, dude.
She didn't want to
didn't.
go because she's thinking the exact same thing you and I are thinking.
Yep, I agree.
And because Becca is, she's working at a job that she likes, which seems to have some crossover to what Fiona was doing. She's like, I'm not going to go because I've got all this work. But here, take my Mercedes and drive out there. You've got the reservation. It's all yours. It's all paid for. Go on, have fun, keep me posted, and we'll catch up when you come back. And Fiona's like, okay, I guess, and she does. So she lets this time be for herself. So she listens to music from her high school years. She stops for some reason at Taco Bell to eat a burrito while driving.
In the car, which she knows is against the rules in the Mercedes, which I loved. I'm like, that's so human. Like, these are all these little things that build her up as a character. This is good writing. It's not just like, it's not so in your face that this is character development, right? I hate that. And it's also not so, I wouldn't even say subtle, but it's so like passive that you're just wasting time. This is the perfect balance. Oh yeah, she stopped and got Taco Bell. She spilled a little bit on the seat. She swears. We've all done that. So we get it. This is another little layer to our caring about this character, right? We empathize. We get it. We're like you. Okay, cool.
Exactly. And she's driving up
this was
north
all
to
good.
Poughkeepsie, and that's where her reunion is being held, at this hotel where they did their prom.
Right.
And luckily, Becca did smart, and she reserved a room that's actually on one of the quieter floors because of all the ruckus that usually happens around this time of year at the hotel.
Yes.
So that's usually pretty good. So what does Fiona do? Well, she kind of transforms from mom into the rock star reporter. So she puts on a black sleek dress, which allows some of her rock and roll tattoos to be exposed. She's got these barbed wire looped earrings, and she sees herself in the mirror. She's like, this is her natural skin, so to speak, and she is ready to hit the party, but she catches from the corner of her eye, this guy named Ian, who at first doesn't introduce himself, but she recognizes him, and she gets kind of flustered and almost smitten, and doesn't see him for the rest of the night, essentially, because as she's going through the actual reunion, she's catching up with people that she went to high school with and seeing how fake they still are. She's just trying to find a way to realize that this is not as fun as it would have been with her and Becca. And she makes her way out of the reunion, goes to the bar, grabs a drink. She finds Ian again, and she makes the proper introductions, and they start catching up, and you find out that Ian was like the dorky geek in high school, but those two were friends, even though they never dated. But they were close friends to various degrees, and they used to make fun of his mom for painting all these cats, portraits at their home.
Yeah, and they partied. They'd always party at his house,
And they would always party at his house. Yeah,
his mom was the cool mom and didn't care or whatever, and so a lot of the other kids, quote unquote, kind of used him because that's where the party was. I wouldn't say that's using someone in high school. I'm saying that's just a convenient opportunity, like most high school kids would take advantage of. But yeah, and so we start to see more of this come together. We skipped over one thing. Can we hit pause for 1 second?
Sure.
The very opening scene of the film was this ghostly thing coming at us. Remember that? That's how we open everything, and we kind of skipped that. Do you remember that? It was so quick at the very beginning of the script.
From the darkness, the blurred figure slowly comes into focus, gangly, pale, spectral.
We should. Why did we skip that? Because that kind of instantly pulls you in. Like, it's not a scary thing where it breaks the rules of, hey, I'm getting established with my characters, but it also is like, well, something's off, right? Instantly.
It is, but it's also it feels kind of like the writer was writing the opening title card to me. I mean, it's okay, but it didn't. I wanted to paint the image with regards to Fiona and what she's doing, but that's okay. I like that. That's fine. It's a gimmick. It's a good gimmick because it does the works. It reminds me a little bit of like something Sam Raimi would have done when he cared about making movies. But yeah, I mean, it's just like it's about the chilling howl and how it gets louder and louder, and then this the figure is upon us, but we don't see what it is. and but we do an interesting transition of the howling sound goes into the howling child with which would be her
Oh,
son with the
yeah,
sheet
her
of paper
son.
over his head.
Yeah,
So
I thought it was good. I didn't feel like it was cheesy, but that's I think that's kind of a subjective thing. But yeah.
oh, I mean
Anyway,
it'd
let's
be
get back
very
to where we're
effective
at
when
in the story.
filmed. I mean that's the other part too. When you film it, it's going to be very effective.
Right.
The thing is that usually this is where I was mentioning earlier that I think he might possibly direct it because that is very much a director's type of note because it has more to do with what's the tone and what's being shown on the screen and how it'd be shown on screen as opposed to just telling us what we're seeing. So yeah, because I mean it's all about the chilling howl and it rises in our skull. This muffled, haunting keen, louder, louder. The figures upon us, like that feels like a director's note more so than just painting a picture, and it's sort of like the prologue to the actual story itself. And the thing is, he does it in only 2 lines, so I mean it works really well.
It's very quick, which I think that's kind of why I was like okay with it. I'm like, yeah, it's like a taste of what's to come, which it feels very gosh, what the heck? I can't even think of his name. Alfred Hitchcocky to me, right? It was like, oh yeah, here's just a little taste, and so I'm kind of okay with because you're not really breaking the fourth wall. You're
No.
you're just like, hey, you're here for a scary movie. Get ready because this is a little bit of what's coming, And so I was okay with that. I kind of like that opening. So, but yeah, so back to the thing. So she goes to she does her stuff, which we kind of fast forward through. We don't see a lot of her talking to a bunch of people. They don't drag that out for 15 minutes on screen. She just does the thing, and then here comes Ian. Right, we get right to it. Which I again, for as far as pacing goes, I felt like it was good. I was all right with that.
Oh yeah, and he's really charming, and they're having a ball, and he's trying to like call her out on some of the behavior that she had in high school, and she's being rather, using a lot of candor and saying like, no, she did like him as a friend and thought of him as a friend, and there's a reason why out of all the other people that went over to his house for parties and stuff, she never was one of the ones that constantly humiliated him or bullied him or jeered him or anything of that nature, but Becca did. Becca went pretty hot and mean on him. But they're making fun of the fact that here we are 20 years later, we're doing well. We seem to be pretty happy, give or take. And
What do you think about their banter? Like I really was interested. I'll tell you what I think, but I want to hear what you think first. Like when we first see them finally talk and it's banter. It's not just small talk. Like this is 2 people catching up after a long 20 years. Well, how did you feel like it was written? Was it believable?
It was pretty authentic because they reference other characters, but they do it in such a way that you kind of understand where they're coming from. Like the whole Chewie's graduation party and
right.
Kind of coming up to the fact that, oh yeah, Chewie, yeah, that's right, we all just quote unquote adults. And Fiona's like, well, what happened to Chewie, though? He's like, I think it became a pasture. It's like, oh, we understand the contrast. He was a wild dog back in the day. Now he's a man of the cloth. And...
Yeah. And then there was the lines where they're like, she said something like, we're both pretending tonight, right? Like to be these other people, like who they used to be. And he's like, yeah, we're both pretending, I guess. And I felt like, oh my gosh, like it was really good. I really liked this back and forth. It wasn't cheesy. It wasn't predictable. It was just the right amount of playful fun that these 2 people would have, but with awkwardness mixed in. So
and a little bit of tension, like some sexual tension as well, because she's surprised that Ian, who was kind of thin and dorky, is a lot more masculine looking and clearly more masculine looking than her husband, who kind of exhibits a little bit of the behavior that Ian was describing himself as having when they were catching up. And you're like, oh, so Fiona had a type, but she was able to commit to Trevor, but for some reason never to Ian, and we don't know why. And that's kind of like one of the mysteries that we have here. And I think that's an interesting mystery to have because part of me is wondering, like, when Ben was writing this, do you think that he had a really bad breakup? And that's how he's able to fueling him for the story?
Okay. Here's what I thought is a similar vein. I thought, is Ben Ian in this, not Trevor?
Oh.
But I thought, is he pouring a lot of his own experiences where maybe he had a girl that was this way with him, that he was way more into her than she was into him in high school. And that this is it was very easy for him to write Ian as a character because it was like, yeah, there was this chick I was way into, but I was too much of a nerd for her in high school. And if so, that's why this is so well written, is because he knows how to write it from that side. And again, this goes back to what so many writers, modern writers in Hollywood, are lacking, which is real life experience. And so I loved all of this. I felt like it was so good. I wasn't bored reading it, which usually we started to get into like, couple stuff, coupley romance kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, okay, I'll read it if I have to, but it's not what I'm going to pick up at the bookstore to read. And so I was great. I loved all of this. I had no problems with it. I could see it on film very easily when they go outside and they're smoking and they're talking about stuff and they're kind of remembering some of their things. I'm just flipping through the script right now. Yeah, and just everything. The imagery was good. Like when she stops, she laughs, and then they talk about some more things. It all felt very believable to me. I would change
it was because it was beyond what a normal meet cute would be. It was a very authentic form of reminiscing, and even though there's a sexual tension underneath, there's still a little air of responsibility between both of them, which made it kind of believable, right? Because again,
yes,
there are points where, like, and I've seen this for many times, and you always kind of be like, oh, they probably would have if they thought they could get away with it, but they didn't because they knew that it wasn't worth it. Where I've seen friends where they catch up, both of them are married, and they're like, oh yeah, we get along so well, and you see the spark there, but at the same time you realize that's as far as it's ever going to go. And what's really funny is, like, especially now, because I've been with my girlfriend, we're going on 4 years this November. But every time I run into one of my friends who is the godmother of two of my godchildren, or sorry, the mother of two of my godchildren. I keep screwing that up.
I was confused there for a second.
Yeah, because I don't have any kids. But I have 7 godkids, and one of my best friends, she's the mother of 2 of them, and we just have a shorthand and a chemistry there that at first my girlfriend was like, were you 2 ever an item? It's like, no, it's not like that. But we never thought of it that way because I was with my girlfriend in high school at the time, who I'd been with for like 10 years overall for our entire relationship. She's married to my other best friend. They got married right after they had their first kid, at 17, 18. So yeah, like it's just a relationship. But sometimes when you have friends that of an opposite gender to you that you've been friends with for so long, you have a different type of chemistry that a third party person would think that there's something more happening there, but they think in the more, more carnal area of things, when it's really just more of this.
Exactly.
It's really just like a deeper friendship that's not that doesn't cover that ground.
It's almost like a sister. It's almost like a sister, but actually in ways it's better because a lot of times actual sisters can be annoying, and so yeah,
exactly.
Some of my best friends growing up were girls and not the boys because of that. I just connected with them more and never thought of them like that, and so yeah, I feel like this whole dialogue just nailed it. I'm on board, and I'm like, and it wasn't the other way either, where it was like three lines and then they jump in bed together. Right?
No, it was they kept it very adult, and I liked
and
that.
It was me too. It was like, okay, she's not just a piece of shit that's gonna cheat on her husband, and in the end she is, but but at least we understand more of where she came from, and then we'll get to this, but then we have the supernatural side of things too. So where Ian's not playing fair, and we never get into that. We don't know what kind of like emotional, psychological stuff he can kind of wield, being this ghost, phantom. I don't know what word to use to describe Ian, because it seems like he can interact with the physical world. He can knock on a door, and he can. I don't know. I'm a little confused.
Well, we've got the first thing that kind of wins her over is how charming he is, but she mentions that, she must have lost her special earring back at the reunion. She just doesn't want to go back and look for it. And Ian's like, yeah, I can understand that. They part ways. She gets off at her floor, goes to her room. She takes a bath where she starts to fantasize a little bit about Ian.
Well, you skipped one of my favorite parts, which was the line about what is it, a throw up superhero or whatever. I thought that was
funny. Yeah, like she never vomits.
yeah, because you see what that scene is, and I can read it if you want me to, and read a few lines for the listeners, but it really shows this is great writing, because this is exactly, if you've ever been in a situation where you're flirting and you know you probably shouldn't be and you really are into this person, but you're like, your brain is like, no, 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 and your body's like, yes, yes, yes. This is the kind of shit that comes out of your mouth, right? You're just like, oh yeah, ha ha ha, like it's awkward and it's funny and you both know that it's dumb, but you both laugh anyway, and you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
this was so well written. This was very, very good.
Well, I mean, the other part too is I think it helps by the fact that the context is that they're reminiscing. So there's a permission between both of these characters where they can get away with things that you can't really have fun with for a first time meet cute, because it just doesn't feel authentic. It's the fact that she's like, yeah, I've only thrown up like 3 times in my entire life, and I never threw up once when I was pregnant with both of my kids, and he can laugh at that and be like, yeah, that's yeah. For a first time person, it's TMI, right? But for him, it's like, well, I grew up with you in high school and stuff, so I've seen you at parties. We've gotten drunk together. Yeah, I think that can hold up too. We can have some fun with that. So
Yeah, so yeah, here's that line. I swear, 15 years, puke free, even pregnant. Ian, you're like a vomit superhero. They laugh hard, right? It's not funny, but they both know what they're doing, right? The elevator dings, the doors roll open. Fiona, oh, this is me. Ian, sure you're good? Fiona, 100. Ian, what? Fiona, percent, 100%. Ian, oh. Like, this is exactly what it'd be like because neither one of them really want to say goodnight, but they know that they should. And so it's like they both know that what they're doing, but they both almost can't stop. It's like they're on cruise control, right? Like they're just going to keep talking because that way they get to spend a few more moments together before the elevators close and separate them, right? He captured this so freaking well, right? Like this is so good.
oh no,
So
this
anyway,
is really great. But it feels like a natural progression into what happens next, where she takes a bath, she starts to fantasize. Then there's a knock at the door. And it kind of startles her. She throws on those, classic white hotel robes, checks out the door. It's Ian. Turns out he felt a little bad that she'd lost her earring. He went back to the reunion, found it, and was there to return it to her. Kind of just a nice gesture. Nothing really more at first. And at this point for her, she's just like throwing caution to the wind. She plants a kiss on him, pulls him in, and they have a night of passion. And
she'd already before she answered the door and when she was running the bath, remember her husband tried to call her.
Yeah,
and she let it go to voicemail. So we're seeing these baby steps, right? Like as a writer, these are all the little details that they don't take much screen time, and they're getting us to the point where we see her make this mistake, and it all makes it believable. Imagine if like I said, if he'd have just been like, "Oh, there's Ian," and he's like, "Hey, what's up? You look good tonight." And she's like, "Hey, so do you." Boom, cut to the hotel, and they're tearing each other's clothes off. Right?
Right.
That's not what this is. And so I like it. Now, the fact that she cheated on her husband, I'm not okay with that at all. And I'll get into that soon. Once we get further into the story, it pissed me off. But it's these characters. We're not here to love these characters. We're here to be entertained and tell a story. And I feel like Ben does this very well at this point.
He does, but he also throws in a little bit of ambiguity, which I appreciated. Where the morning comes, she wakes up, and she's not sure if what happened last night actually happened. There appears to be no real physical evidence on her or anything around her that would suggest that this was real until she takes a look at the earrings and she sees one's in the case and one's actually on the counter.
And to build reality, I think this is where you would be. You would be coming out of your dreams. You're waking up, and you're gonna go, oh wait. I'm here. I'm in this hotel. Did this happen? And you're going to be in denial. You're going to go through those stages, right? So her first stage is denial. She's like, no. I wouldn't do that. Of course I wouldn't do that. I'm married. I love my husband. I love my kids. And then she sees the extra earring and she's like, oh, shoot, here we are, right? And so again, very well written. Doesn't take much screen time. Very believable. I'm magnetized to the screen at this point. Like, what is she going to do now? How is this? What's going to happen next for this poor woman who just made a terrible decision because she's so stupid, right?
Yes, so, she's trying to reclaim her youth and the life that she felt that she's missing out on, and it has come now with a great deal of guilt and regret. And when she returns, now I need you to help me out a little bit with this. I'm going to scroll through to see if I can find it. But I think the first person she speaks to afterwards is Becca, if I'm not mistaken, right? Or does she go straight home and then everything is all? She's just kind of distant. I can't.
I think she's okay. So she sees the moth. This is our first moth. thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then the next scene is her in the Mercedes driving home. So I don't think she hasn't spoken to anyone at the hotel. She just leaves.
Right. So she leaves, she heads home, and she is reunited with her kids who are all missed her and so happy that she's here. And
Yep.
yeah, so she's back at home. So she hasn't gotten to talk to Becca yet. But Trevor doesn't really suspect anything's going on, but he does know that she feels a little off. And
yes, and again for believability, she like so many times Hollywood would just be like, "Well, it's fine. She's just another lying woman who's totally fine with her choices, rah rah ree." Instead, we see her go into the bedroom, right? The kids, she's seeing her kids, they're loving her, they miss her, and she has this like flood of guilt, and she has to close the door and lock it for a minute.
Yep.
And again, I'm like, okay, thank you for actually portraying how someone would actually act in this situation, how a person with a conscience would react in this situation. And so I really appreciated that too.
And we get this really cool set of events where, like, even Trevor acknowledges, like, you smell like a hospital. And she's like, I think I've been sweating vodka. So it goes back into something that this shorthand alone tells us that when Trevor met Fiona, she was very much that wild person that we got a glimpse of at the reunion, and now she's not that anymore. She's kind of going through everything. So she takes a shower. They have a regular day. When she goes back to bed, Trevor's asleep, and she's just kind of trying to get back to sleep herself until her phone vibrates with an unknown caller, and she quickly panics and shuts it off, the phone completely. And then all of a sudden, as she kind of turns to her husband, she sees Ian lying right beside her, and he's just got this lustful gaze at her. And then we cut straight to the morning where she like jerks awake and she's like freaking out and trying to hide it. And
bunch of missed calls that
bunch
night,
of missed calls, and she quickly deletes the history of those missed calls because she's entirely freaked out. And she's trying to play the rest of the day, the morning routine, as it's normal. And
yeah, and again, look how well written this is. Fiona wedges Oliver into his adorable sweatshirt. Their innocent morning routine, so this is her dressing her little boy, and her innocent morning routine now mired in crippling guilt.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, yes, because she would be. A person with a conscience would be suffocating in guilt right now. Be like, what have I done? This is my family. I didn't mean to do this, right? So just more great writing. Again, I look at that and I go, okay, how do you convey this crippling guilt? It would just have to be the look on her face as her son is getting ready, right? Like that's all you can do on film for this moment. So anyway, yeah, let's keep going.
So she's going through the normal stuff, and we have Emma basically saying like, yep, her nervousness is kind of affecting her stomach. She's feeling queasy, and Fiona's doing the mom thing, saying like, you know what, this is it's okay to ask, it's okay to worry about this. It's a big deal for you. You've never done something like this before. She's doing all the good mom stuff. Like, she's not pushing the kid, saying, you're going to do this, because if you don't, it's going to embarrass me. Like, it's none of that. It's just, proper support.
And it's not the opposite, which is, well, we've got some pills. We'll give you some anxiety medication to fix it. It's not either of those. She's being a good mom and being like, okay, this is part of it. You've got to tough it out. And we'll get more into that because when it gets closer to the recital, she does that again, which I thought was very well done.
It was really well done. So at this point here, Fiona's just getting the kids off to school, and her first instinct is like, she's got to talk to Becca. And we go straight to this grungy cafe, and Becca's doing all the probing questions, saying, "Oh, is it someone from our class?" And, "Oh, is it Steve Derby? Is it Keith Bearwood? Is it James Killebrew?" And she's like, "No, it's Ian Wilkes." And Becca's like, how the heck did you pull that off?
Well, and she even giggles, remember? Which, again, I'm like, this isn't an endorsement of her behavior. This is a realistic, probably, response. Says Fiona buries her face in her palms, right? That's a guilty response. Suddenly, she can't help but crack a smile. She even giggles a little. So this is I wouldn't say duper's delight that liars have, but it's similar to that. It's it's sort of a ripple in the wake of the honeymoon effect of this, like, exciting night that she had.
Partly.
And I'm like, that's a very nice detail. That line didn't need to exist at all, but it adds to the scene in a very critical way, like adding salt to like a French fry, right? Like a fry is good. You add a little salt, ooh, it's really good.
It can be.
I feel like that's what this did. I was like,
that's one interpretation of it. The other one is basically the nervous giggle, the one where it's like you are very uncomfortable. The only response you can do is kind of laugh, and that's something that you hear.
Yeah, I could see that too, because the reality is crushing, right? So she's like, So she's like, oh, this
Her
is sort of
body
how
is releasing endorphins to try and make her laugh, so she's not crippled
Yes.
by it.
Yes, I like both of those, but I didn't think about it from that angle. That is,
But
that is,
that's the brilliance of this. You can interpret it two ways. So you can get, depending on if the director wants us to still like Fiona, you make that a crippling giggle of guilt. Or if you make us want to hate her, you make that one where she's like, she's smitten. And here's the thing. So Becca calls her out saying that she's smit. And Fiona defiantly says, I'm not. And
yeah. And then she's like, who was it? And then she's like, she tells him, or she tells her friend. And then the bomb drops, dude. Oh my God, this scene, like, oh, these actresses, I could see this on screen, dude. This would be so huge. This is almost as big as the Sixth Sense moment, right? Where you're like, but yeah, she's like, well, who was it? And then she's like,
it's Ian Wilkes. And he's like,
Are you sure it wasn't James Killebrew? Are you sure it wasn't James Killebrew? Because they look a lot alike, she says.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, she's like, no. It's like, well, he's been dead for 12 years. And Fiona's like, what? No way. I know Ian. He was there. She's like, because here's the thing that was really interesting, and it was very authentic. Because Fiona says, he was in our crew, and Becca says, fringe crew. And then Fiona says, we went to prom together. Becca calls it pity date, and Fiona's like, friend date with an exclamation point. Like, she was very assertive that she actually liked Ian.
Yes, it wasn't pity, and there was a friendship. But we also know later, and part of this, even at this point, is that Ian felt much more strongly about her than she did about him.
Absolutely.
Which is typical high school relationships, even adult relationships. Like, it's hard. That's the thing about finding the right person to build a life with, is timing is everything. There could be someone who's a great fit for you, but it's just 3 years too early, right? Like, people, it's all about the timing and stuff. And so anyway, I love this back and forth with her and Becca. Could totally see this happening. And then in the end, she's like, are you sure it wasn't James? Because they could have been twins. And she's like, I know what he looks like. And then at the same time, she's like, wait, but that's not possible if he died 12 years ago. And then we're here watching this going, scratching our heads too, along with Fiona being like, yeah, wait, what? What's going on
could it have
now?
been this James guy posing as Ian as like a lark or something? Like, we don't know, because the next thing Fiona does is she starts searching for Ian's obituary, and she finds it. And you find out that he's born in 86, died in 2012, service was at Oakwood Cemetery, and then more weird stuff starts happening. There's a buzz at the call box, but there's no one outside. So she's kind of freaking out there. She tries to pass it off really quick, and then there's the knock at the door, and she goes through the the peephole, and there's nothing. Like, there's nothing out there. So she steps back from there is something out there. There's a this familiar man, but it's foggy, so we don't really understand who it is. She freaks out a little bit, steps away from the door. Another set of knocks, and she can only barely kind of whisper out, "I can't." And no more knocks. She then opens up the door to the hallway. There's nothing there except for
the neighbors
and some smudgy footprints that were leading directly from the hallway to her door. And this is where more creepy things start happening. With one of the things that kind of stood out for me is later on the next day, the kids are getting ready for school. Oliver is looking for his socks, and he throws out all these things that were nicely folded into the laundry bin for the fresh laundry. So she's like, I got to clean that up later. She does her day. When she comes back, the apartment is clean, and the grinding pipes no longer grind. And the weird stain on the ceiling is shrunk, and she can't find any rat poop anywhere.
Yeah, so basically Ian's spirit is helping her, making her life better, right? In the ways that it can, whatever. Which hold on, before I forget, the ammonia smell, right? That's a reoccurring theme.
Right.
Is that just why? I didn't quite understand. I'm like, is it because this is just the smell that his ghost just happens to smell like, this phantom? Is it because his body's is it ammonia because this is his body, right? And she just sees it as handsome, because we do see later that he's just muscle and sinew, and his body's half rotted or whatever. Mm-hmm. And she just smells him because it is really his body. Or I don't want to jump to the ending here, but I'm just the ammonia smell. What did you think with that? Was that clear enough for the audience to follow? Because I felt kind of confused on if it was, is it just a subtle thing we don't need to put too much thought into?
Well, the first part is that, and this is kind of the one hiccup with this script, is that we will never know that it's a smell of ammonia because they never actually mention in dialogue that it's ammonia.
They don't talk about it in dialogue, so the
So
viewer would not.
all we know is that
Okay.
there's a smell. Ammonia is actually used. In fact, a lot of forensic doctors, usually medical examiners, in the coroner's office, a coroner's department, use a lot of ammonia because it helps clean them up, and also they have to clean the bodies. I don't believe it's part of the embalming chemicals, but there's definitely a step of ammonia being used after the a person has passed away, and I think that's supposed to be the hint that Ian is indeed dead and is a ghost, and one of his tells that he's in the area is that you get a whiff of a little bit of ammonia.
Right.
Unfortunately, I hope the writer kind of does a revision where he incorporates something of that nature, so that we understand when she's doing that smell, we know that it means something and how it has a connection to it.
They smelled it in the elevator, but I don't want to go back and reread that through that part. But did neither of them mention it in dialogue? They mentioned, of course, the puke smell, the puke thing.
Yeah.
But wasn't that we smelled ammonia there too, right? So yeah, I feel like I get the theme. It's associated with him. He has a smell, which you want to kind of play into the senses for description and character development. But yeah, I was just wondering about your take on that. So. Yeah, so then she looks him up. She sees the obituary. Then she looks up James Killebrew on Facebook, right?
Right.
And she's like, oh, yeah, it does look a lot like him. And then she calls the hotel.
Yes. And also, yes, you're right. The first line that they say in the elevator when they enter is, oof, ammonia. And then Ian's like, somebody probably horked. That gets into the whole the vomit thing. But
the
to your
vomit
point,
thing.
She calls pretending to be James Kilbrew's wife to get information, and finds out that I guess he'd never.
Oh no, his subordinate. She says, "Oh hi, my boss stayed there last week."
Oh right. Yes.
In my for accounting. But either way, she's just trying to get information on James at this point, right?
Yes, just to confirm was he there,
Right.
and yeah, and it's like her response is, "Are you sure?" And it's basically like that's the answer, saying we don't have him booked, which means he was not there.
Yes. So that mystery is closed at this point. So nope, it definitely wasn't the dude that looks a lot like Ian. And even if it had been, that just works against her character. Like she's such they were quote unquote so close, she doesn't even recognize him properly 20 years later, right? And she sleeps with some other dude.
Right.
So that would have been bad. Anyway, okay, so then we get to, is this where she was late to get, yeah, this is where she was late to get Emma. And you were right, Peeps is the nickname for Emma.
Yes.
Yeah, so take it away.
Well, from there, it's really just kind of, we're getting peppered of these very strange happenings going on in the apartment and around Fiona's life. There's moments where out of the corner of the eye, she feels like she's seeing Ian, but it's never 100% distinguished. And this is kind of getting unnerving her a little bit. But Trevor, seeing that Fiona is not doing so well, she decides, you know what, let's pawn off the kids to my mom's and give ourselves a couple of days to just kind of readjust and get back into the swing of things, because clearly whatever you did at the reunion, however much you drank, you still have more stuff to kind of get out. And that's kind of what they do, because we have these weird points where like she's in the shower and she feels and sees like a shadow in the bathroom through the shower curtain, and she calls out to think it's Trevor. And when there's no response, and then she kind of finishes what she's doing and she goes out there, she talks to Trevor. It's like, hey, were you in the washroom and bathroom with me? It's like, no, I've been here this whole time. And we get those types of things, and it's kind of interesting as well, because the next step we find is that a big brown rat is twitching on the floor. It's clearly been ingested some rat poison, which we don't know how the rat poison got into the apartment or where it actually is, but it's there. And Trevor's the guy that he's starting to take a little bit more charge of things around the place, which is a little bit out of character for him, but it's also something that Fiona is kind of liking a little bit, because when the rat is there, Trevor's the guy that's like, just, oh God, this is gross. And oh wait, sorry, I'm flipping this around because this actually happens later. So when the rat is here, Trevor is disgusted by it. His face is starting to turn gray and grim, and Fiona's like, I'm the one that gets it, and she goes to, with the bag and throws it in the trash.
Yeah, because he pats his chest, kind of like I can't breathe, kind of a thing. That's what I took from that. Like it's too much for him, so she's the one that throws the rat out.
It's later on when he decides, let's pawn off the kids, and I've got a surprise for you, and he takes her to a grunge metal concert, and this is where he gets a little bit more vulnerable, but he also starts becoming a bit more confident and starts getting into the groove of things, and they're genuinely having a lot of fun, and you're it's a nice change.
It is, but it's also it's a heartbreaking contrast, because we just met these people, but yet we've established enough of their history that we know that she was the wild child, he was probably the dork, and now he's really doing this thing for her. Was it her birthday? I can't remember what this was. It was
just a surprise afterwards, because the night before he does his only kind of assertive move, which is he's under the covers, he's naked, and he's kissing her, and she's like, I can't. And, she says that she's sorry and that she loves him and he loves her too. And when he asks, like, if something happened in Poughkeepsie, she's like, nothing, really.
Well, no, she says something along the lines of, just reminded that I gave up my entire life and that now I'm just a disappointment. Something like that. Like, she says that to him. She straight up was just like, and it was a way to like tell a half truth, right? She was disappointed about all that stuff, but it also was a way for her to avoid telling the truth about what really happened, the rest of it, right? And again, very human response. She doesn't want to lie to her husband, but she also doesn't want to tell the truth to him about what happened.
Yeah, and, she's hiding that one element of the rest of the truth, with is that she feels like her life is not what it should be, even though she's appreciative of what she has, but she's missing that. She's missing the other part of what she loves, and then. This is actually where Trevor becomes assertive, because he's the one that says, nope, this is what we're doing. We're sending the kids off to my mom's. You've been having a hard time. I'm going to make this easier for you.
Right, and which is the irony, is it makes it worse for her, because he's doing such an awesome job as a husband.
It just builds that guilt even more. Exactly.
It turns the screws to that. And I was like, oh, this is very good. This is very good. And also very believable, because a lot of times in these relationships, like when something like this happens, he would feel her kind of pulling away. And he'd be like, oh, well, don't do that. I care about you. I want us to stay close, or to bring us back closer together. What can I do? Well, I'm going to give you something that I know you like, which would be this night. And then they even pivot halfway through the night. They were going to go stay at a hotel or whatever. And instead, he's like, I know what you need. And then they do a last second change, and he takes her to basically a club with a live band playing, right?
Exactly. And what's funny is that on the way there, they're talking about how Trevor's mother just doesn't approve of Fiona. And Trevor just basically defends his wife, and he says, I don't, what, who cares what she thinks? And then, drops the C-bomb on his mom. And Fiona's like, whoa. And it's like, what? She is. And her own friends don't even like her. So why? You shouldn't give a crap about what she thinks. And he's like, he's becoming more of like the man that you feel like she needed at this point. He's not the guy that came in kind of uncertain about what's going on. It almost feels like he has a goal and a direction now.
But here's the thing I'd say about that too, on that very note, is it that he's changing, or is it that he's now, we're just seeing it through her eyes that it's happening? Like, I kind of felt that way. Like, I think maybe he's kind of always been this way, but now it's more.
She's paying more attention to it.
She sees it more now because of the guilt, because of what she did. Now she's like, oh, he's not as bad as I thought he was. He's not as boring as I thought he was. You know what I mean? That's how I read this.
Kind of like her night out was a palate cleanser. Now she's finding the guy that she married originally in the first place, that she's painted a different picture over.
Right, which ultimately, the end, I'm not going to ruin the ending, but we learn much later that that's kind of the theme here, is that she was taking her life for granted. She wasn't. I would say, this is a cheesy way to say it, she didn't have that attitude of gratitude, right? She was focusing on the negative instead of the positive. Yes, she loved her kids. Yes, she was a good mom, but she couldn't let that go. She was still stuck in the, well, I had this job and I had all this stuff. And the thing is, no matter what you do in life, there's always going to be a trade-off, and the grass will always look greener if you let it. And so too much of like our world now is just like, well, this instant gratification BS, right? And I felt like, and this is what I wanted to talk with you about at the end, and I don't know how we are about spoilers. I know we really want to save the endings, but like I want to get to that part with you where I'm like, let's talk about what was the message here, right? Towards when we get towards the end.
We can we can skirt around that a little bit without spoiling it, because this script kind of, I mean, with all the weird things that are happening to Fiona at the apartment when she's alone, and how it's kind of this guilt is getting at her. Like, this is where I brought up, like, the telltale heart from Edgar Allan Poe. Like, the beating heart under the floorboards is just kind of driving the guy nuts.
Crazy. Yes,
and Fiona's kind of going through the same thing. And this is kind of what's coming in here, but they're amplifying it not just internally but externally with Trevor's actions. And what's fantastic is that, like, they go to the club, they decide to head home, they start to make love, and she decides to get into control. But as she's in the midst of it, Ian's spirit kind of comes in and just starts kind of touching her and kissing her as well, and that just causes this huge thing of ecstasy and triple downs the guilt as well.
Yeah, because she likes it. She feels his hands on her from behind her, and like it's this weird erotic thing. And then again, that goes back to my earlier comment on like how much of this can we really blame her for? She's responsible for her actions, but if there's some supernatural weird stuff happening here, right? That like that's not playing by the normal rules of our universe, right? This isn't just her being a cheater. This is her being seduced by this supernatural being, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, that adds another element to it, right? Like I don't want to dismiss that as be like, nope, she's just a cheater, I hate her. No, like I do empathize with her in the situation, and yet I can still at the same time be like, yeah, but she still cheated. Like that's a really shitty thing to do. She shouldn't have done that. But then it's like, yeah, but who did she cheat with? Like this wasn't, and we were talking about this backstage before, is they weren't like a big deal as a couple. They were, in fact, they weren't ever even in love. Like they went to prom together. Great. She said we went as friends, right? So he was definitely friend zoned, but we know that he cared about her much more, enough that his spirit's still here to be with her, right? After 12 years. But at the same time, it's like, well, how much of it was supernatural? How much of it was beyond her control because he's pushing so hard for this thing to happen, right?
Yes.
So,
like,
anyway,
did he somehow have the ability to manipulate the powers that be so that Trevor couldn't get promoted? Like, we do not know how far back this goes.
Or was it just this was her ultimate test from the universe, from God or whatever,
right?
And she failed that test because she gave in and did it, right? Like, did she have enough self-control that she could have stopped it? And I feel like that's kind of pivotal to how this ends, because I'm like, if she didn't have the control because it wasn't fair, it was stacked against her, then oh well, because it doesn't matter how this ends because she didn't have control because she was illegally seduced, right? It wasn't fair. She had no control. But if she did, and then we get the ending that we get, then I'm kind of like, well, you kind of get what you deserve then, right? Like, so,
yes.
So I don't know. And I don't know if that's the whole point of this story or if I'm overreading into what, Ben was trying to write here for a story. But because a lot of horror movies, they're just horror movies. There's no life lesson, right? It's just like, yeah, shit happens. Like Cabin in the Woods is still one of my favorite, like horror movies because it does such a great job of surprising me. Most horror movies don't. And that one's suddenly like, well, actually, all of these monsters exist. I don't want to ruin it. Cabin in the Woods is amazing. You need to watch it. But anyway, so let's get back to this. So yeah, so they do their little night. She has a little ecstasy with, I guess we have a little menage a trois going here with the ghost. And again, I love that the sex scene wasn't overdone. It's just, it happened. I felt like Ben does a good job of not dragging that out and just moving on. So yeah, what's next? I'm not sure how much further you want to go.
Well, we get a couple of Sam Raimi-isms. So for instance, Fiona, she pees blood and then finds maggots in the toilet. So she starts Googling some weird stuff. And I do like the one thing, like she Googles, "Are ghosts real?" And then she basically says F off and shuts the laptop because she's like, it's going to go down a bad rabbit hole for her.
Right. And I could see myself doing something like that. Be like, dude, this is stupid. And the maggots and pee thing got me. I'm like, I almost, I puked in my mouth a little bit. And then, one part that I real quick is after the whole crazy sex scene happened at the very end, another little guilt thing is Trevor was like, wow, that was amazing, right? So her husband, clueless to this ghost being in bed with them, was like, yes, that was awesome.
Yeah, something else happened in there. We don't know what. But either way, there was
yeah.
he was very jazzed by this to the point where, like, okay, we're going out for pizza tomorrow.
Yeah, we're gonna celebrate, and as a third person observer, we're over there going, oh, dude, no, like it's not what you think it is, like
Yeah. That's part of the dramatic irony, right? Like it's
yeah, and he's such a nice guy. Like I feel so bad for Trevor and the kids in this whole story. I feel so bad for them. So okay, yeah. So then what? Where were we next?
Well, now basically at this point, it's like Fiona has to figure out what to do. So she decides to, after she drops the kids off at school, she drives back to Poughkeepsie to talk to Ian's mom, Debbie, and just try and get a feel of what's going on. And Debbie, she's old, she's frail, she's trying to be polite, and when she asks, why weren't you at his funeral? She's like, we kind of lost touch. I had no idea. I didn't find out he passed away until the reunion, and that's what made me come out here. She then goes up, excuses herself to the washroom, but doesn't actually go. She goes into Ian's old room and finds an old VHS tape and puts it into the TV VHS hybrid thing that hasn't been touched in over a decade or maybe even 20 years. And inside is just a whole bunch of footage of all the parties that they went to, but every single party would end with a heavy zoom and focus on Fiona back when she was a teenager. And it starts to creep her out.
It was just anything, like her walking up to the front door of her house. Like he recorded that. There was just all this footage showing how much he was, I wouldn't say obsessed, but I'd say enamored. How enamored he was with her.
Right.
And I felt like that's how I felt. I didn't feel creeped out by all those, which in a horror movie you'd think like she's seeing all these clips back to back to back of her in these situations that she didn't know she was being recorded in, a lot of them, and you'd think, oh, it's crazy, it's a stalker murderer guy. I never felt that. I just felt, yeah, here's a guy who's in high school who's in love with this girl, that's friend zoned him, right? Like she doesn't feel the same way. And so, yeah, and then here's his poor mother years later, and she watched all of it happen in real time as her son would come home at night, I'm sure, and be like, Mom, I tried to ask Fiona to dinner, or to go out on a date, and I couldn't do it. I was too scared, and she was over there laughing with Mr. Football player, whoever it was. I could just totally see that happening, and so I felt like, again, this is great character development, where all of this, there's a lot you just see like these little peeks through the window of his mom's life and his life, and your brain can easily fill in all the rest. And again, this is something I really like, Ben's style of writing. Like this is one of the most enjoyable scripts that I've read with you this year. So
the other part too is like all of these clips that he has edited together show an escalation, because Fiona actually knows in a lot of these shots that she's being filmed. Like there's even parts where she looks directly at the camera and then she flips it off. And then we get to the baseball game where Fiona is actually in the bleachers with her then boyfriend, who's a jock. And we see that all the stuff leading up to that is with her friends and with Ian, and she's happy. And when she's with her boyfriend, she's actually bored and not happy. And then,
oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yes.
And then she actually sees that Ian has been recording her across the way, and what she do? She goes back to that self, and she flips off Ian and the camera. And it's like there's a chemistry there. It's not something that Fiona is completely fully aware of, but it's something that Ian is picking up on. And I think Ian is also looking into it way deeper than what she's actually doing. It was like, oh, there's my friend. I'm happy to see him. Here's what I'm going to do with his camera. And then he's just like,
yeah,
if she really does like me, why doesn't she leave this guy for me? That, like, no, he's trying to give her agency to do that when really he should be a bit more assertive. But here's the other context too. And I know this one because oddly enough, my second eldest godson went through this for about 2 months until he came to me and I told him how to solve it, which is that he kept on asking out this one girl, but she kept on bringing her girlfriends out with them, thinking that it was a group thing. And I basically said, just stop asking her out and don't even invite her anywhere. And then eventually, two things will happen. Either she'll ignore you, in which case you'll be better off for it, or she'll kind of be interested and actually want to do stuff with you. And that's as far as I'm going to take it there. But I'll just say that he's in a nice relationship now with someone else, and he's doing well. But
that was good advice. That was great advice. Yeah, and I again, I loved, this was all so believable, and it made me care more about both of them as characters, because the other side or another angle I would say when I looked at this was she wasn't ready, right? She was they were both young, but she wasn't ready to see him in that light, right? Like I went through a huge stage in my life where I was attracted to all the wrong kind of girls, right? Like the party and exciting kind of girls. And they always broke my heart, right? Cheated on me, or just were a nightmare, and they were mean
terrible.
and vicious. Yeah. And it wasn't until, it wasn't until my early 20s, like probably 21, 22. And there was this girl in my life that was like a buddy, right? She was like my sister, and she was cute, but I didn't see her like that because she was so wholesome, so kind, so good, that she was boring to me, right? Compared to what I was used to. I was like, yeah, but I don't even see her that way. And then I had to have a close friend sit down with me one night, and he's like, look, you need to ask her out on a date. And I was like, why? That'd be weird. It would just feel awkward the whole time. And he's like, just do it. You need to do it because you are spending all the time with the wrong kind of girls. You need to start to retrain your brain to be like, no, this is a good relationship. This is healthy. And so I did it, and I hated the date. I'm not going to lie, Script. I hated it. I took her to a movie. We did dinner, where at dinner she met some of her family friends, and it was like this weird thing where she like left the table for like 20 minutes of our dinner and just sat over at their table and talked to them.
Ooh.
It was so, dude, it was so, and I'm like, what am I doing here? I don't want to be here. And then I took her to a movie, which was like, oh, dude, I remember it was Mel Gibson's revenge movie that came out in like 99 or 2000.
Payback?
It was Payback. Yes, it was Payback. Lots of violence, lots of language. And she's like super conservative, like spiritual, like religious girl, right? And we're in there for like 15 minutes, and and for whatever reason, I stopped being clueless, and I looked over at her, and she's sitting there like she looks like she's in physical pain every time the F-bombs drop. All this stuff is happening, and I'm like, and I lean over and I whisper and I go, I'm so sorry, I didn't even think about this. Like, are you not okay with this, with a rated R movie with all of this language? And she's like, it's okay. And I was like, no, seriously, tell me right now. And she goes, no, it's okay. You spent money on this movie. I go, I don't care about the money on the movie. I was an idiot for bringing you here. I should have asked, do you want to get out of here? And she's like, she looked at me like, oh my gosh, yes. And she said that. She said yes. So I got her out of there. Anyway, my point is that like we all go through different stages. Hopefully we all don't stay forever 16. I know some people do in their head, but I felt like maybe with these two, with Fiona and him, like Fiona she wasn't ready yet. She didn't see that this was that this guy who was let her be whoever she wanted, that she wasn't bored with, that she enjoyed spending all his time with. She was too young to understand like, oh, this is actually a good relationship. This is a healthy relationship,
Right.
And to me, I feel like that's good for the story, because the way this ends, in a way, it almost makes the ending even like juicier or like sadder, I guess. Anyway, so yeah, I'll stop now. But that's how I kind of read this part of the film with these flashback clips playing that she was watching.
No, I think that works out well, because again, these clips, they do escalate in creepiness subtly, which I think works out well. But then this also leads into the next point. This gets us to our point of no return, and that is when Fiona, Debbie finds Fiona in her son's room. She freaks out. She kicks her out of the house. Fiona is driving back, and she's just trying to reconcile. She's just trying to reconcile everything that she's seen so far and that she's learned. And then all of a sudden, Ian's presence appears in the back seat of the car, and it freaks her out to the point where she basically meets a tree. And she's saved by the airbag, but she's in urgent care, and Becca is the one that's, picks her up and says, like, what the heck happened? What were you doing? And she's just like, I had to try and figure this out. And Becca is now saying, you've got to tell Trevor what's going on, because this is serious.
This isn't just an affair. This is like creepy stuff happening.
This
You
guy
need
is
to tell me.
stalking you right now.
Yeah.
And Becca's like, but he's dead. And Fiona's like, but he's dead. And Becca's like, well, something's going on because this is not working out. And as they're driving through Poughkeepsie to head back to Brooklyn, Fiona's like, stop at the cemetery. And she gets out. She goes and finds Ian's grave, gives this impassioned speech about how, she felt something. And she felt something that she hadn't felt it for a long time, and she wanted that, and she's grateful for it, and all those things. She's trying to appeal to Ian's humanity, and saying that, this can't go on anymore, especially if you care about me. You got to let me go. And she apologizes, and she gets back into the car, and she goes home, and Becca and Fiona conjure up an excuse to Trevor, which is that Becca's dad was in the hospital, and Fiona was the intermediary. And on her way back, she got into an accident, and that's why their SUV is totaled. But Trevor doesn't care.
The cover story. That's the cover story.
And Trevor doesn't care. He's just like, I'm just so happy you're okay. We can make do with a rental, what have you. And it still just starts to eat away at Fiona to the point where, she's trying to hide it. Emma is still getting really nervous for her recital, but they're getting all prepped up. And I'll throw this to you because it goes back to the motherly advice that you wanted to touch on. So take it away, sir.
Yeah, I'll go from memory. I won't go straight from the script on this one, but yeah, I loved how she basically teaches her first lesson about self-talk, which so many people, which is something I wish I'd learned at a much younger age, and the importance and the strength of self-talk. We all do it naturally to ourselves in our head. We talk to ourselves. But it's so powerful. So I'm going to get on my soapbox for just a second, which is like, this is important for her to be teaching her daughter this, like that if you feel scared, in a moment like this, right? This is a key time where you need to utilize self-talk and convince yourself like, no, I'm okay. You give yourself that pep talk, right? Like, I'm good at this. I'm strong at this. I'm going to do this. And there's so much power in that because so many of us don't do that. We just let our natural inclinations, which are usually our insecurities, become our self-talk. And then those things take away and cheat us out of opportunities and moments where we need to step up and grow from these experiences. And so I loved this. I love this. I'm like, hey, look, good parenting in a current script, a Hollywood script. Yay.
Yes.
I'm like, there's no way this is going to get made by Hollywood because this shows good parenting. Anyway, so I love that she did that. She's like, I know your tummy hurts. I know it's your nerves. You're anxious. This is normal. Say this, repeat after me. And then her daughter's response was something like, Mom, this is stupid, which is exactly what a 9-year-old would say.
Yep.
And she's like, just try it for me. Try it for me. And then she does it, but she still doesn't like it. Mom goes and sits in the audience. And then we have some more of the rehearsal going on. And then when she gets up there, when Emma gets up there to do it, or about to, we see her actually quietly take her mom's advice and psych herself up to go and do this. At which point she sits down. She's like super nervous. And there's this long pause, and mom's out there cheering her on silently. And then she jumps into her piece, and it's phenomenal. I think the way it was described is it was like everyone in the audience realized, hey, this isn't just a stupid kid rehearsal. Like there's something more here with this girl.
It's profound and fluid and soulful. All the things that you want to hear from this as well. And then, of course, for Fiona, while she's watching this, she sees another maggot pop out. And we did brush over this a little bit just because there's a lot to cover, and we also don't want to spoil. But as soon as she gets back home, the pipes start rattling again. The rats show up. Everything kind of goes back to normal, and she thinks that she's kind of rid of Ian until this maggot shows up at on her arm and falls to the ground at the recital. And then all of a sudden the piano playing stops. Emma is kind of frozen there, and then she just starts reciting the stuff again.
Yeah, we think it's nerves. Normal, right? Because remember, they'd actually foreshadow this. Mom's like, if you get stuck, just like you skip it and just push through, right?
Right.
So we think that because we've been prepped earlier from mom's advice, hey, this is what's happening, but that is not what's about to happen, is it?
No, because as she's reciting this thing, talking to herself to psych herself up, she then vomits crimson onto the keyboard, onto the piano, and we are now on the rush to the hospital. And this sadly has to be where we cut it off, because from here on out, it's a series of events that basically puts Fiona into a position of bargaining with Ian to try and save her family. And this is the third act escalation. It's quite riveting. It's really well written. It's the other part that I think really kind of sells this is that between the first act after she spends the night with Ian and to the third act, we don't physically or see or hear Ian at all. We just see things that are happening around that clearly is Ian's, working from the shadows, so to speak. And we don't even understand the rules of the supernatural aspect either. But it's we do get a hint, and this is a mild spoiler, that Debbie, the mother, knows that Ian has a presence on this plane of existence.
Yeah, and that's what it's so confusing. And I wish there was more clarity on that, because I hate when they just like convenient, because it's like, as a writer, that's easy. It's easy to like leave out those details, because it's hard to think of how you're going to explain that to the audience, right?
Right.
So I'm like, yeah, but it's also nowhere near the level of like a J.J. Abrams mystery box either. Like, so in a way, it should be kind of mysterious. So I'm like, I wonder if that's on purpose from Ben's point of view. Mm-hmm. But yeah, because we see him, he cleans her apartment, right? He fixes the water pipe, so I guess he's a plumber too. Like, there's all these things, like, what are the rules? And then after they had sex, like, she has to search pea maggots, right? Which again puked in my mouth when I read that. So he injected some maggots in her. So was that like how he?
Or it might be a hallucination. Like, we don't know. Like, that's the thing. Like, it's very
yeah. And then at the very end, which I know you don't want to spoil, but what happens again? It's like he is there. Like, there's some physical. So it's like whatever. And this is the part that sucks, because the part I want to talk to you the most about, we can't, because it's the final. It's the final scene of the film, and it will ruin the ending. So yeah, I will just say this much, which is, in the end, I did not like the ending, and I have a small twist, very small, that I would do at the end, that I think would make it better. But yeah, that's all I can say, because I know we can't spoil it. So
yes. So what I would do is I would strongly encourage all the listeners to Google the script and see if you can get your hands on it. If you can, if you can't, you can always reach out to me. And so long as you don't try to make it go viral, I'll be happy to hook you up with the screenplay so you can read it yourself. As stated at the start of this show, it looks like Ben is going to put this into production himself. Maybe he'll get some third-party financiers. I hope he does, because this leads us into the next stage, Mac, which is this a green light or a pass for you?
I would definitely greenlight this. I think, like I said, it's a tight script. It's got great pacing, very relatable and likable characters. It's a unique twist. I don't watch a lot of horror, so I don't know how much this has been done, or how similar some other movies have been done. But this had elements of Hellraiser in it, and then it had some moments of not The Exorcist, but maybe Frighteners, in it. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, this isn't a very frightening movie. It's more of a suspenseful type movie, which is, I'm more on board with movies like that. I shy very quickly away from movies that are very graphically goreful, like Saw and stuff. I I can't stand them. I don't see the point. But so yeah, I like this. I would definitely greenlight this. What I can't get into is just, I would have a slight twist on the ending to make it more of a happy ending. So.
Well, definitely something with more solidity to it. I, too, would greenlight this, because there's something in the writing that made me really understand the type of tone that Ben was going for. I was thinking of movies like Drag Me to Hell, The Sixth Sense. Like, these are the types of tones you're getting, sure, where it's not a mile a minute type of pacing. There's a steadiness to it, like a heartbeat. But then as you go from Act 1 to Act 2, the pulse increases just a little bit. But by the time you're in Act 3, you're like, it's a pounding pulse, whereas in Act 1, it was just a nice little steady, simple one. And yet everything feels like it's organic. It's authentic. It fits within what you're trying to do. And it actually plays into the nice hodgepodge theme of, number one, the giving tree, because there's an allegory there with Ian gave a lot it is implied that Ian gave a lot to Fiona and she didn't reciprocate. And right now Fiona's in a life where she's giving a ton to her children and her husband, and even though the children aren't in the position to reciprocate, the husband is, and the husband has been, but she just doesn't pay attention to it. And we got that parallel as well. And then when you mix that in with Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart and the the weight of guilt, it does really come to a really nice blending of these types of stories. And I am actually rather surprised that this came in so low on the blacklist with only 10 votes. I think this should have been higher, because
Agreed.
this is a very high concept, low budget film that could be well marketed. Like Blumhouse would probably really, want to throw in on this.
A24, right? I think this would be right up their alley too.
Yeah, I think they could have some fun with that as well, because this is definitely a type of basic thriller that is kind of like a safe bet for audiences. And the other part too is that you have that strong female character with a great deal of vulnerability in her as well, because her strength doesn't come from physicality. It comes from the difficult decisions she has to make as a result of a mistake.
Right. And I should have said this sooner, but I really felt the other vibe I got, that you picked up The Sixth Sense. I totally missed that. But I totally caught that, but I forgot to mention that because when I was talking this about my girlfriend, I'm like, yeah, it's got like this Sixth Sense thing. It doesn't have the punch at the end that The Sixth Sense had when you realize he was dead the entire time, but that's really hard to match.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I picked up on the vibe here was very, I'll go back to it, The Grudge. And Sarah Michelle Gellar in The Grudge had that sweet vulnerability that you're kind of like, you really are like, oh, this person, this horrible situation, right? The twist on this was that she got herself into this situation, right?
Yeah.
But did she? Then we have another whiplash, as minor whiplash, where it's like, well, did she? Because how much of this was this supernatural thing that she couldn't have resisted, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can't just be like, well, she's a cheating hoe. Like, I don't like her. She's terrible, right? She's a piece of crap. No, even if there was no supernatural thing, the way she's written is very realistic, where she has all that guilt and stuff. So I still would not just dismiss her as a character. And I know a lot of people in today's modern audience don't care about this stuff as much, but I'm old school. I'm still like, no, like you don't do this. Like I don't watch movies or TV shows like Pretty Little Liars or Desperate Housewives and that crap. Like I see the trailers and stuff and I'm like, this is just crap I would never go near, because I feel like it normalizes really horrible behavior and horrible people. And so for this, I was like, yeah, I can see this, where if it is, and I think that's where we're heading towards, like she almost had no control, because here's the thing. Where was he for 12 years?
Right.
Where was he for so you mean to tell me it took this magical 20-year reunion and then he's like, oh, the moon and the stars aligned and this is the night he can go and seduce this woman from high school, this girl from high school that he always loved? Like, so if it was so strong and powerful, why did it have to happen at the high school reunion? So this is another one of those mysteries that in a way I'm kind of okay with, because here's the thing, we're talking about it, right?
Yeah,
we're talking
absolutely,
about it.
yes.
And that's okay. It's okay to subvert expectations in ways that people go, huh, I wonder this, huh, I wonder that.
Well,
Like,
the thing is, it's not a subversion. It's basically, it's the proper setup for the surprise. And the thing is, there is a reason why the reunion is held at that particular hotel and why Fiona is put into that particular room, which will be part of the spoilers, but we're not going to do that because that is something you have to read and discover for yourselves.
So, and again, that's what I can't say too much about that, but again, that's part of the stars and the moon aligning, right? So it's like, oh, okay, so it does kind of make sense. And so that's what I mean. This is, any film is good if after the fact you can have a good constructive like question session about it versus a pissed off, you cheated me, I feel cheated out of a good ending because you just like lied to me about certain things or you left things purposely left out. You know, back to the J.J. Abrams mystery box stuff like that. Yeah. Just you always feel cheated. The last season of Lost, I was, no pun intended, I was lost. I was like, what is this, right? and it's so cruel and lazy as a writer. That is not good writing. Subverting expectations by being a dick is not good writing. No. And I feel like so many things lately, And by lately, I mean the last 10 years, have gone that route where it's like, well, I don't have to answer all these questions. I just have to have a lot of mystery leading up to it, and then I'll let the audience interpret what it means. Bull crap. That is bull crap. That is such lazy writing. Anyone can write a story without an ending and be like, yeah, see, it really subverts your expectations. And I felt like the end of this kind of had a little taste of that, and that's what I didn't like about it. And I'm like,
Well,
and
it
I'm
kind of
also,
does, but it also, I mean, everything is wrapped up. Like, that's the thing. Like,
it's wrapped up, but it's not a happy ending, and that's what I didn't like. I wanted something that was a little bit more happy, but again, I wasn't. I also wasn't so cheated that I'm like, I'm going to tell everyone to not go see this movie. I would not do that either. Like, it was just kind of
no.
one where I'm like,
This,
I don't like leaving feeling like. I don't like leaving a theater feeling like I paid money to feel like crap when I leave. I don't.
Well,
That's why would I do that?
that's the thing is that there's a bittersweetness to this that is kind of a good throwback to like the 70s horror films. Like, there's a bittersweetness to the end of The Exorcist, right?
Yes. It's been a while, but yeah, I remember. The
and again, because I don't want to spoil it, but I will just say this: there's a bittersweetness to this ending. Some people, I think some people will actually love it, and I think there's a number of people that would probably be in your side, your corner there. And I think that's actually, see, that is the more balanced intention to differentiate from like Ryan Johnson saying, I want people to be I want to divide and make half the audience upset, because that ending isn't designed to make you upset. It's designed to make you understand the weight of those actions and consequences. And those are very different things. And I think that goes to Ben's credit right there. Like I was like, yes, I could think of a number of other ways to do it, but I think that's what this is all about. And also to kind of reflect onto the theme of the giving tree and the whole grass is always greener on the other side and all those types of things.
Yeah, and be grateful for what you have, like the attitude of gratitude that more people need nowadays. Like, so yes, I love all those themes. That's why I'm saying, like, green light this all the way.
Mm-hmm.
When we're done with the show, backstage, I will tell you my small twist to the end. It will add 4 seconds to the film, and I think it will make it, in my opinion, exactly the way it should be wrapped up. But yes, green light this all the way. I would go. I'll let you buy the popcorn. I would love to see this on screen for sure.
Yeah, and I hope we do get to see it on screen, because I mean, I was not expecting that. Doing this only because this is episode 35, that we'd actually have a handful of screenplays already going into production in various levels, and this one
awesome.
being one of them. Like that's something good. That and the other part too is like, this is genuinely an entertaining script. This is something I can see general audiences really liking. Like, is it going to be a $50 million opening weekend box office? No, but it could be a 15, and it's a very low budget script, so that's already on track, and it would have legs, because definitely after word of mouth.
What do you think? 10 mil to make this movie?
Oh, effortlessly. Yeah, you don't even need that.
That's what I mean. So if you had a 15 mil opening weekend, like on a $8 million budget, like that's awesome. Like, you're fine. You don't even need to, like, I think this would be a good word of mouth movie. I don't think you need a ton of advertising for this either. Like, but yes, and we need more movies like that. We need less sequels, prequels, and whatever equals, and get more movies like this that are more original. And we don't need a sequel to this either. So the ending on this was fine. Like, just a one and done.
Yeah,
we need more
100%.
films like this. So, yeah,
100%. So, with that, I think that's all we can really say without getting into spoilers. So I want to thank you, Mac, for swinging by this week. Always a pleasure having you on the show, talking scripts and answering your very fascinating questions. I want to thank everyone out there listening for the show. Remember, we not only do we stream this on YouTube, but you also, if you can't catch it live, you can also see it on our Patreon as well. That's patreon.com/thescriptdoctor, where if you sign up for the base tier, you get access to what sort of scripts we are going to be covering for the live show. Plus, as things get, it starts expanding, as we get a little bit more resources coming in, we'll also be doing some other fun things on the Patreon as well. So that goes to invest and support this show.
Like a Script Doctor popcorn cup.
I don't know about that. Maybe one day. Those are.
It'll be like the Wolverine one with your mouth open. People can reach into your mouth and get
Oh, that's the last thing I need out there. But in addition to
funny.
that, you'll also find some other exclusives as well. Sometime when I do a video that will eventually be released on YouTube, you'll get early access to it there. You'll also get certain one-on-one interviews that I have with other people in the industry and YouTube space regarding a whole slew of topics, as well as some screenplay written reviews, and also access to me if you are a writer out there, where I can do some consults with you at a discount of my normal package rate. All of that is included in the Patreon there at various tiers. And remember, the base tier is free for 7 days, so you can actually take a look at all my past articles, past reviews, past tips and tricks on writings for free for those first 7 days. And if that is something you like and you want to see more of, consider signing up to support the channel and the Patreon. And more of that will be coming your way. With that, I want to wish you all a wonderful long weekend, Labor Day. Thank you so much for sticking through us for 35 episodes. We're going to be doing more because we have scripts all the way to the end of the year. And in a few months, the 2024 Blacklist is going to be released. And I'm going to be having some coverage on that to set up for season 2 of Scripts on Saturdays. So be on the lookout for that. You guys listening here have a great advantage over anyone else because you are getting on the ground floor of some of the movies that are going to be hitting theaters in the next few years based on this show here.
Like
With
John
that,
Madden. That's going to be awesome, man.
John Madden is going to be one to look forward to. I can't wait to do a script-to-screen comparison on that. So be on the lookout for that as we follow the progress for Madden. And, so as I was saying before, have a wonderful long weekend, Labor Day. We will see you all next week. And never forget, guys, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.